Hello, everybody. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, evening this evening. We are going to be connecting with Loren Colin, a U.S. House Representative of District 34, and we're going to have a great conversation today. So just allow us a little bit, and then if you're just jumping in, hit the likes, share it out, comment down below if you have any questions. Well, we're about to get started momentarily. So just allow us just a little bit of time for us to get ready. I'm going to have my partner come in soon on this wonderful interview. So just give it a little bit of time. So jump on in and hit the likes and welcome in. Just give me 2 seconds. And we are back in it. Hello, everybody. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. It's good having you all here. Share the live out to anybody that you would love to share it out to. Show some support from the people. Because at the end of the day, this is one of the most important things to be doing is getting the chance to show your representatives, that you're looking for them. If you know anybody from California, specifically in District 34 or just in California, the state itself, please bring them in here as well. We would love to have them jump into this as well and communicate as much as possible if they have any questions that they would love to have answered. And if you're already, or if you haven't followed them yet, come follow OVC. We are a wonderful group of individuals that are looking to create a an area and a group of, hey, what's going on, Jess?
Hey. Okay. Give me 1 second, everybody.
Take all the time you need to.
I'm gonna drop back down. Bring me back up. For some reason, my green screen is not working.
I got you. I got you.
Okay.
Just gonna wait for her request. Okay, there we go. Maybe that will work this time.
Yes. Let's see.
But tap the screen, share away when you can. If you know anybody, like I said before, that is in the state of California or is even in District 34, definitely bring them in as well. If they have any questions that they would like to ask Mr. Loren Colin, we would love to have them have those questions answered because this is the beginning of something new. We want to make sure that every representative gets the opportunity and the chance to actually, show themselves as to who they are, and we want to make sure that they get the chance to really, you know, shine and get their voices heard and get their positions heard as well. I think she's still trying to come in really quickly. Come try again, Jazz, when you get the chance. We'll get you in here. Okay, there we go. There we go. Is it working for you now, Jazz?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. For some reason, my green screen option
yeah. Mhm.
won't turn on. Is my camera on?
I
Because it
don't see the
shows my
camera
camera on.
on. Weird. Yeah, let me see if I can try and ask you to turn the. Oh, there we go. I can turn your camera on, but it won't let me do anything
Okay.
with the green
The
screen.
effects. Yeah, my effects won't load, so I may have to just do it like this. Sorry,
Okay,
y'all. My effects won't load for my
perfect,
green screen, and nothing shows up.
perfectly okay. Then let's see if we can get the
Okay.
invitation out to Mr. Lauren himself, and then let's bring him on up. Start asking some questions and see how he's feeling. Hello, Mr. Lauren, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hello, how are you this evening or
I'm
afternoon?
doing really well. Thank you. It's evening, 6 o'clock here, even on the West Coast.
Yeah. Oh man, I miss the West Coast weather. Oh goodness.
It was a brutal 80 degrees today in the middle of December. So.
Oh, I know that pain all too well coming from Florida. I can feel the humidity already coming in through the windows. So,
Okay, let us know whenever you're ready, Lauren, and
Uh,
we'll get started.
I'm ready. I guess just real quick. I guess what are your names? Sorry.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
yes, I'm JazB.
Hi,
And I'm
JazB.
Hi.
Matt or Mr. Finney.
All right, Matt or Mr. Finny. It is a pleasure to meet you both.
Hi, nice to meet you. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Vote Counts Town Hall. I am your moderator, JazB, and I also have above me Matthew. How are you, Matthew?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jazz?
I'm good. Matthew is also moderating with me tonight. So, for those who are not familiar with our vote counts, we are also known as OVC. We are a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity, and ensure every voice is heard. Through education, outreach, accountability, and action, we're building a stronger democracy. So, with one informed vote at a time, please join us because your vote is your power. So, today we're joined by Loren Colin, who is running for California's 34th Congressional District. We'll be talking about his background, his vision for the district, and of course, taking your questions live. So, Mr. Loren, the format of the town hall is when we will talk about a set of topic questions with you. And after that set of topic questions, we will allow one person to come up and ask you a question. If no one's in the queue to ask you a question, we'll just pick a question out in the chat to speak to you on. Okay?
Sounds amazing. Let's do it.
All right, so Mr. Loren, for those don't know you, we've learned that you live in Los Angeles for over 30 years. You've been active in local politics and built a career in marketing and tech. What moment of or experience you made that just told you that, okay, it's time for me to run for Congress and offer an independent vision for the district?
It probably started actually when I was 17 years old and thought I really want to serve and do something. But then life had its journey. And yeah, I actually had in 1997, I helped a candidate run for the elected city charter reform commission, which he lost. But it also was my first experience in a campaign and understanding, the mechanisms of government. And then actually, somewhat ironically, I guess, out of that charter reform commission, we didn't actually change the city of LA's governance, other than we did add these neighborhood councils. And I served when I lived in Silver Lake on the neighborhood council there from 2006 to 2009, and I was the co-chair for the last 2 years there. And then life took me in a different direction. Again, it just became like I needed to focus on my career and my family, and I did that. And then my startup stopped starting a couple years ago, and I was trying to figure out what was next. And it just came back to me like, I really want to serve. And I looked around the races, and this is the one that made the most sense, not just for my vision of bringing independent, nonpartisan politics to the forefront, but also because this district desperately wants change and desperately, like the argument here in California 34 is not to get anyone to be a progressive. We're as progressive as it gets. But our progressive vision, which everyone here feels is the right one, not just for this district, but for the country, has come nowhere near to fruition. And our current representative, Jimmy Gomez, has done nothing to bring it to fruition. So, what sort of started as a selfish gambit on my part, I've been an independent, nonpartisan for 30 plus years. I knew in 1996 that the Democrats were not going to be the party that was actually liberal or progressive. And I watched this with Bill Clinton as he destroyed welfare, destroyed immigration, failed to even try to actually deliver any form of tax-funded public health care. I knew that there was no fight in the Democrats, that they were already captured 30 years ago by corporate interests, and it's only become worse since then. So I'm like, I'm going to run because I want someone like me to vote for. I've never had that opportunity, right? In 30 plus years, I'm sure 98% of my votes have been for Democrats because in our two-party system, if I wanted to participate, I had to bite that bullet and I had no other choice. Well, I'm tired of biting that bullet, so I ran. Now, it's quickly become obvious that this is not about me. From the 9 months or 10 months I've been campaigning now, talking to the people of California 34, this is about all 740,000 residents here, and that they want change and that they want real representation and they want an independent voice, not someone who's tied to billionaires, corporations, a party, or any other special interest.
Thank you for that. Okay, so before we get started with the tough questions that we're going to have for you tonight, I want to offer you a quick icebreaker question just to kind of test your temperatures quickly.
Yeah.
So, if politics had a no nonsense superhero, what would your superhero be, and what would be your villain origin story?
um, my superhero would probably be uh, I won't put up with that BS. And my origin story would be, and I think this is actually something I know it's something I hear a lot of, is that people are tired of politicians who say one thing and do another. And that really was probably my origin story 30 years ago, becoming an independent, was hearing all of these promises from Democrats and supposed liberals and supposed progressives that they just never delivered on. And so, yeah, it's no more BS. I'm the no more BS super candidate coming to tell you what I believe, and not just again, it's not my beliefs, but that I'm reflecting back what the people here want, and we're going to deliver it.
Okay, I appreciate that. No more BS. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Matthew to go ahead and get started with our first set of topic questions. Matthew.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, reading from the biography that we've got acquired from you, you have done a lot, which I think is an absolutely remarkable thing. So I think that, starting with the economic development of California, I think this is a great way to kind of start with these questions. So as a longtime resident of the city of Los Angeles, being a small time a business or a small business owner and being also a former Silver Lake Neighborhood Council co-chair, how would you reshape the federal economic policies to support the independent workers and immigrant-owned businesses that dominate the 34th district's economy?
Everything starts with our tax code. The wealth hoarding is destroying our country. And Bernie Sanders is correct when he says that is the number one villain today. But the crazy part is we, the people, enable this. We keep electing the same officials over and over again to write the tax code. And the tax code is written in a way that doesn't protect us, it doesn't help us. It's actually written to steal our wealth and to vacuum it up from us to the ultra rich and to the corporations. Rand Corp has said somewhere between 50 trillion and 90 trillion dollars over the last 45 years has been sucked from the bottom and the middle to the top. But again, like what is that mechanism? Like we hear the stat, but how did it happen? It happens through the tax code. There have been 45,000 changes to the tax code since 1980, since 1981 when Ronald Reagan took office. And each of those lines is basically, it's to get too technical and boring, a tax expenditure, what we mostly call a loophole. And those loopholes don't apply to us. There's a few that apply to everyday Americans, and it kind of then makes us like glom onto them, like we're really getting something, like the SALT tax break if you're a homeowner, or even the child tax credit. But those all just cover up the trillions and trillions of dollars over decades that the tax code has been allowed to steal our wealth. Basically, my big idea, is a comprehensive wealth tax that removes every single tax expenditure out of the tax code for individuals and businesses, and a fair and equal tax that treats every dollar equally of wages, because that's where all of our money comes from. And there's no hiding our wages. The government finds a way to get all of it, right? Up to about $400,000, you probably have no way to hide it. So treat wages, inheritance, capital gains, and the pernicious buy, borrow, die that the ultra rich use of taking loans against their stock. Just treat it all the same as regular income. Now people complain, they're like, well, if we did that, we our taxes would go up. No, our taxes wouldn't go up. But also in the view of no tax expenditures, the first 100 or 125 or $150,000 of our income would be taxed at 0%. And then after that, there could be as progressive as you want, but it will be a progressive tax starting at that first $150,001. Why is that the answer? Because everything that, even when people talk about wealth taxes, like Senator Warren talks about a wealth tax, that will not fix the fundamental problem. Because the fundamental problem that is keeping the people of Los Angeles with less opportunity, and in some places in this district and throughout the city, impoverished, is absolutely the wealthy stealing our money. So that's where it really starts. How we spend our money is completely different. So how we tax ourselves to get back to a fair and equal tax is the start. How we spend our money, I actually am more open to what those priorities are. I think there should be a common defense. Tonight, the NDAA just passed, Jimmy Gomez voted for it. $900 billion plus other expenses for the Department of Defense. Over $1 trillion in defense. Matthew, JazB, everyone listening, that makes your life worse. It does not make you more secure. It does not make you safer. It is, we're going to foot the bill. Our children are going to go to wars that we don't want, and it's going to make us poor every day. So again, I would have been a no on that. We'd cut that budget in half, and it would be safer and more secure than we are today. And then the other part that sort of equals that out is what would we spend money on? Well, we cut our defense budget in half. And I think the two things that we have to spend money on are tax-funded public health care that covers each and every American from cradle to grave. While Medicare for all is great and more of a slogan, I actually think we should copy Germany and Japan in the Bismarck model. They spend 1/3 less and cover everybody and get great results, the best results in the world, the best outcomes in the world. And the other thing is tax-funded public education and rethink education. Because look, not every kid, every human being in this country is ready for school from 5 to 18 or progresses the same. We should rethink education as a public good that's available to each and every one of us throughout our whole lives. Those might not sound directly economic, but when we simplify our tax code, when we get it back to taxing all wealth equally, when the government provides the three most basic fundamental things that a market can't. A market cannot defend us. A market cannot keep us healthy because there's a profit motive that wants us dead. And a market cannot educate us because the worse our education is, the better they do. Those are, to me, the three things that would fundamentally change opportunity everywhere for everyone in California 34 and throughout America.
Absolutely. And especially when in regards to the market, a lot of places in California 34, like Sunset, Cesar Chavez, Figueroa, even Koreatown, they're suffering with a lot of vacant storefronts at the moment. So when you get into those positions federally, like what tools do you believe could revitalize these local economies without displacing longtime residents?
And what you just described actually comes back sort of to the housing theory of everything is rents are high for housing, rents are high for commercial spaces as well. And so we need to build, build, build. And this is where I'm truly different from not just Jimmy Gomez, but the other competitors in this race. And there is a federal response to building more housing. In Los Angeles alone, we need 450,000 more units of housing. It's not a dispute. The city of Los Angeles knows this and says this in its reports. A separate UCLA and a separate RAND study. RAND is not exactly like a liberal bastion, right? Have both confirmed this number. The state of California needs 1 million plus units of housing. So while at the state level in Sacramento, we've made great strides in doing things to make more housing available, or the possibility of it to be built is still not nearly far enough. And there's still lots of feet dragging here in the city of Los Angeles. In fact, the bill that just passed Sacramento, SB 79, to build more housing along transit is being foot dragged already through the city of LA. And part of it, while I don't agree with it, I understand because 65 to 70% of the areas that SB 79 would affect is actually in my district, which is the most impacted district. And Matthew, the word you used is the best word, is displaced. We can't build affordable housing or housing that is affordable. In California 34, if we take an apartment building that's a little older, 8 units of affordable housing or RSO housing, and you tear it down to build 16, you still displaced 8 people for 3 to 4 years. They're not coming back. Like, we know they're not coming back. So at the federal level, what can we do? What must we do? I have a 3-part plan. The first part is to create a federal loan guarantee for multifamily housing. There's loan guarantees for single family housing, but not for multifamily housing. That whole missing middle of condominiums, duplexes, triplexes, garden apartments, bungalow apartments, actually the architecture that people in LA love, that make LA cool, let's build it and let's have a federal loan guarantee for the construction and the financing that allows that to happen. It still goes through the private banks. B of A and Citi are still going to get their 3% origination fees and all that fees. This is not, again, a communist takeover. This is making a market work. The other part is the zoning. So 73% of Los Angeles's residential area is single family home zones exclusive. There's a completely racist reason behind that going back for the beginning of this country. But when redlighting ended in the 70s, they're like, well, what can we do now? Well, we'll zone it so that we can only have single family home zones, and the others, mostly blacks at a certain time, but mostly black residents, and then Latino and other brown residents couldn't get into these areas. So again, California 34 is the densest area. We have the most multifamily housing. It's a matter of getting the renters here. Renters in LA outnumber homeowners 65% to 35%. But the gerrymander in Los Angeles isn't a racial gerrymander. It's a homeowner to renter gerrymander. Even with that 65 to 35% number, in every district at every election, more homeowners vote. I want to get renters excited. And so I have a plan to use the power of the federal government, carrot and stick, to help force Los Angeles to upzone. So basically, the idea is large block grants for cities that take these grants, which they will kind of nudge have to in exchange for upzoning everywhere. And again, if you upzone to multifamily homes, it doesn't mean you can't build a single family home. It just means you have the opportunity, the freedom, the personal freedom as a landowner to build, but to offer block grants in exchange for that upzoning, to modernize the permitting and planning departments and to speed things up. So you'd have to include like 30-day permitting, but you can hire more modernized, and that's how we build. And the third leg is something that actually really does affect the people in California 34. After the mortgage meltdown of 2008, when we had the ninja loans, no income, no job applications, we don't want to go back to that. But the reaction to that was you basically need almost perfect credit. So we have tons of people in California 34 and throughout the United States who might be paying $3,500 or $4,000 in rent, but because they might have a 680 or 690 credit score, which is still technically a good credit score, they can't get a mortgage loan. So I want to use the power of the bully pulpit of Congress to get the banking regulators to, again, not go back to ninja, but to recognize that people with not perfect credit scores certainly have shown that they are making their monthly payments. And it could be as something as adding monthly rent payments to credit scores to show that when you make them, your credit score goes up. Because currently they don't, but if you miss a rent payment and you get evicted, it does show up on your credit score, right? So let's not just have the negative, let's have the positive and use that as the lever to get people mortgages.
Absolutely. That is a wonderful answer to the question. I really do appreciate it, Loren. To any of the individuals that are currently watching right now, if you do want to ask a question specifically to Mr. Loren about the economic development that is happening within the state of California, you're more than welcome to place out your questions right now. We will jump back into that audience ask question in just a moment. But Jazz, if you would like to take over healthcare really quickly, I'll see if I can make up a question too, just in case.
Okay, sure. So, Mr. Loren, so regarding healthcare is concerned, we've learned that you support universal healthcare, similar to the systems that are in places like Germany and Japan, which would have universal coverage that would help a lot of your future constituents. And those future constituents make up undocumented immigrants, gig workers, and low-wage residents. Could you tell me what would that look like for your community, and how would that benefit them if we were to implement that type of system?
Absolutely. So just a quick little background on what's called the Bismarck system. That's because it goes back. Germany has had a universal healthcare. And I learned actually when I was walking in East Los Angeles, don't call it universal because people here are free and it's not free. So on the advice of a constituent, it is tax funded public healthcare. And as a constituent who's paying into those taxes, we should be demanding the most for our money. So it was in the spring and I was canvassing in East Los Angeles and I went to 3 consecutive doors and Latino men opened them. One was in his 30s, one was probably in his 40s, and one was almost closer to retirement. And I was like, what's up top of mind? Everyone says homelessness, but that's not right. But then the second one for all of them was healthcare. And I didn't have to tell them the answer. They told me the answer. They're like, man, I would happily pay 8 to 10% of my wage as a healthcare tax to not pay premiums, deductibles, co-pays, and co-insurance that comes out to 15 to 20% of my paycheck, right? They get it. they get its one third. And they also understand that their wages are suppressed because if you're a small business owner in Los Angeles and you have the minimum requirement of insuring your employees, it's almost 2 to 1, right? So if you have an employee who has a $500 premium each month, the employer is spending $1,000. Let's get it so that they're each paying $300 a month, and that frees up $700 for the employer to pay a higher wage. That it frees up so the employer can expand their business. So it is, and also in Hollywood. I mean, people talk about like the death of Hollywood, and it might be a little bit over exaggerated, but certainly production is down. Production is way down, and for a while it's because we couldn't compete with other states. But now production's down even in places like Georgia that was taking some of the production from California because nowhere in America, nowhere can you compete against Canada or Europe or New Zealand or Australia to shoot a TV commercial, a movie, or a television show simply for the cost of providing health insurance to your crew? If we, the competitive advantage that we would have from tax funded public healthcare that covers everyone from cradle to grave would reignite Hollywood right here in Los Angeles. And also, again, there are so many small businesses. I think one of the scariest things is when I walk out and I talk to people is the young people who are 26 and younger, who do have their parents' health insurance, who, especially as they get getting closer to 26, have no idea how they're going to be insured. And the number of small business owners that simply forego health insurance. And it's really scary that they'll take the hit on their taxes versus getting covered because they can't afford it. So again, I think it would fundamentally change how everyone approaches life, where we once again feel that there's a sense of security, and you don't have freedom without security. So I think people's ideas of freedom and being able to live their life as they see fit would also be reignited. And it's just a no-brainer. It's cheaper and better than what we have now. But Democrats and Republicans, both parties kneel down and kiss the ring of the private health care or private health insurers. We don't need private health insurance. We need taxpayer funded health care that's always there when you need it, will never cause you to go bankrupt.
Okay, thank you for that. So, we also learned that within your district, residents are deeply affected by the cost of prescriptions and tend to have limited access to mental health care. Could you walk me through what would that federal policy vision look like to improve the care, especially for those dense urban areas, specifically like Echo Park and Bull Heights? Could you kind of walk me through
Yeah,
that and tell me how would that
yeah.
look?
Part of it is even cultural, right? So we are one of the most immigrant heavy districts in the country. And that doesn't, when you hear immigrant, that doesn't mean undocumented. Well, we have our share. It just means people who are also legal residents or have gone through the whole process to become naturalized citizens. So part of it is, and California does a decent job of advertising, like there should not be any shame of coming in and getting mental health care. So part of the federal approach needs to be helping the states advertise and tell directly to the people, hey, through this tax funded public health care system, you actually have access to mental health care, to dental care, to vision care, to long term care, right? It's not just going to the doctor to get a checkup, it's everything. So it would be available to all. Certainly, the county does a lot or LA County is the number one provider of mental health care in Los Angeles to elderly populations, adult populations, and especially children. I think as we found, as the pool of money became more clear and obvious, that if you were a provider, that becoming a therapist or becoming a psychiatrist, which honestly, of all the types of doctors that we have, is probably the one that's like disappearing the fastest. When we make it so that we have a healthcare policy that's not just on how we approach it, but our healthcare policy is so messed up that we don't get the number of GPs that we need and primary care physicians that we need and psychiatrists that we need. We need to fix that too at the federal level so that we have enough people who, I want to be a doctor, well, I actually want to be a psychiatrist. Hey, I want to help people, I want to be a therapist. And give them the opportunity to be more providers. I think that combination of knowing that you will be insured as a provider, knowing that you will be paid, will make it so that we start to take the sort of mental health care desert and make sure that people have the opportunity to get the care they need.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to open it up for someone to come up and ask you a question regarding healthcare, or anybody in the chat. If there was something that we didn't touch on regarding economic development or healthcare, that is okay as well. But in the meantime, I did want to follow up with you regarding the universe. Well, you told me to kind of reword it because you essentially it's just a single payer. I mean, is it still synonymous if I
It's
use the term single
no,
payer?
so
Just one.
the
Okay.
tax. So the thing about so single payer systems are like Canada and Britain, and those are
Okay.
not the best systems to deliver. The Bismarck system is actually the government has multiple agencies that is sort of quasi governmental that it has oversight of that take in regional taxes, right? So there's like however many states are in Germany. So regionally, they take in the taxes. Almost all of the healthcare in Germany and Japan is provided by private doctors and private hospitals. Again, so it's not this crazy idea of like socialism or communism. What it does, though, is, and people are like, well, will it scale? Germany has 85 million people. Japan is now down to 125 million people. Scaling it up for us to 336 million people is not a hard mountain to climb if we already know Japan can do 125 million. And again, it's because the government. So in Britain and in Canada, absolutely, the government hires the doctors, determines your care, delivers the care, and that's when people are talking like Medicare for all. It's not quite that either. Again, it's sort of just a slogan from Democrats. It's not really defined. I'm actually saying, hey, let's put aside American exceptionalism and let's copy the best of the best. And we can call it America Care. Let's call it America Care. I'm proposing America Care, the best of the best. But let's be honest, America Care is just going to be a copy of what we know that works in Germany and Japan, which is every citizen. And so there's two levels. Basically, 85 to 90% of the citizens have regular wage work and they pay through their wages and through their employer. The remaining 10% are people who run their own businesses or who are the ultra rich, and they have what's called supplemental private insurance. And they have a separate market that they have to go to get their insurance. The providers are still virtually all the same providers because all of the providers, not all, most of the providers in Germany and Japan are still private. So that's how it would work. It's not a matter of, we don't have to reinvent a wheel. We have to copy the best and then do what we really do great here in the United States, rebrand it, AmeriCare. I got to write that one down. I've said it. I got to write it down. Maybe I should trademark it too. Can you trademark things going to Congress? Figure that out.
I love that.
Okay, thank you
Uh,
for that clarification. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you for the
Oh,
question too.
yeah,
yeah,
go
if
ahead,
you
Matthew.
don't mind, because I wanted to jump back into the economy really quickly, because I was looking at some really interesting things that were happening recently in California per Politico, actually about a month ago. They came out with an article last month about limiting the rent hike in Los Angeles, with a quote from City Council member Nitya Raman, quote, "What we have before us right now is an opportunity to make LA more affordable, because when people can afford to stay in Los Angeles, the entire city thrives." End quote. The other side of the coin, though, is LA landlords are concerned about the loss of income that they would be receiving that would go to maintaining those properties, forcing them potentially to sell and discourage the development of new places like apartments and houses within the city itself. How would you tote the line of keeping rent prices low while still increasing the creation of places to live? And do you see a different way potentially for housing to be better for the people in California?
Yes, I was actually having this conversation last night at a small political gathering. So what you were describing and what Councilmember Rahman was being quoted there, and she's a district over. I'm in Council District 1. She's in Council District 4. Just I can see it on the top of the hill. Was called LARSO, and it was Los Angeles's rent stabilization ordinance. It actually did pass. I believe Friday is when it's supposed to come up for its second vote to officially pass. And yes, it took a 40-year-old rent stabilization law that was really out of whack with all other municipalities in California. Uh, Basically, landlords could charge for if you had a baby, your baby came, they could charge 10% more of your rent. If you, yeah, exactly. There were, if you had electricity and water, which are both of the things mostly is provided, almost exclusively provided by LADWP in the city of LA, they could increase your rate 1% each year just based on having those as your providers, or LADWP as your provider, regardless of how much the electric bill or water bill went up for the landlord. So basically, there were rent stabilized units that could go up over 10% a year in rent, with a floor of, I think the old floor was 4%. So basically, no matter what, you're looking like at a minimum of 4% if you were in an RSO unit. The RSO that passed just now has a 1% floor, a 4% ceiling, is tied to 90% of CPI. And if you have a baby, they can't charge you for it. In fact, if you have any dependent in your house, they can't increase your rent for it. I think in an immediate situation, it's necessary. But that earlier conversation about we just need more housing, and this was kind of the discussion I was having with someone who was behind that LARSO initiative. Now that LARSO's passed, I think you can't keep squeezing blood out of this turnip. We need to get to building more housing. And I think there's things to get to building more housing, like um, if you have an eviction without cause, there's a formula that you can end up with like between $10,000 and $20,000 a year. I would like to go to developers and say, and renters, and say, why don't we up this to say 2 times a year's rent or 3 times the year's rent? And then if you're a developer, you know that you have this fixed cost to get people out of the land you want to develop. And I think I can make the argument that 2 years or certainly 3 years of rent that you can, as the person who's being evicted, can find something suitable. And again, you don't have to spend it on rent. You can take that money and use it however you want. But if you only spend it on rent when you are displaced, you actually should be able to find someplace new. And if we're building fast enough in Los Angeles, someplace new here in Los Angeles. I think a lot of, depending on where you are, and again, I understand it. I think depending on where you are, a lot of the messages that you hear are strictly that we need more rent control. But when I do talk to landlords, landlords who have small, just a few units, and landlords that have hundreds, this law, the RSO law, only affects people or landlords and people renting from landlords in buildings from 1978 and before, which covers something like 60% of the city. Those landlords are now facing, especially in the light of fires throughout the city, skyrocketing insurance, with the ridiculous tariffs, which we can talk about the economics of tariffs here and how it's affecting LA also. But with tariffs affecting, I mean, he literally put 100% tariffs on toilets and sinks, right? So if you're a landlord, the federal government is increasing your costs way faster than now you can increase rent. What I fear is we already have the oldest housing stock in the city is affected by this law. And landlords still have to make a profit, and they're actually guaranteed it. There's a system that if they feel that the RSO, the new RSO rules are too restrictive, they can go through this whole process to say, oh, actually, I need to raise it by 8% or 9% or whatever percent they need to achieve their minimum, what the city says is their minimum return that they're guaranteed. But no one goes through that process. So that process is there. Maybe it's telling landlords to use it more. And then again, it's that fairness, right? Like they actually have to show their books, say that the city has said this is the minimum they can make. So it could be, again, if we're talking about block grants to cities to modernize their processes, let's make sure that one of the things that Los Angeles can modernize through a federal block grant is the system that allows landlords to go to the city and show what that minimum is so that they can raise their rent. Now, again, if you are one of those renters who's like, oh, it should only go 4%, now you kind of feel screwed, right? But again, something has to give. And ultimately, what I think has to give is build, build, build. When we start building in Los Angeles, the benefits aren't just fixing the housing crisis. The benefits also is how we fix homelessness, which is the number one issue on everyone's mind in LA. No matter rich or poor, no matter where you live, homelessness is the number one issue. We fix homelessness. Building those 450,000 units in the next 5 years would be the number one jobs program in the city has ever seen. And it's not just construction jobs, which there's sort of like this latent racism and discrimination behind, oh, you're just talking construction jobs? No, the kids that are going to the high schools here at Roosevelt and Franklin and Wilson and Lincoln and Bravo, I better name them all or I'm getting in trouble. Um, they're all great schools and they all have great students. And a lot of the students I've talked to, they want to be developers. They want to be architects. They want to be engineers. And what's happened over the 40 years of downzoning the city is most of the buildings here, again, that people love in Los Angeles, were built by these small and medium-sized firms, small and medium developers, small and medium construction firms. We need to bring them back. So when we get back to building, it becomes this immense jobs program. The other thing we talked about it kind of briefly is, if you're in Beverlywood and you have a 10,000 square foot lot that you bought your house in 1993 for $80,000, you might be paying $5,000 a year in property tax on a house that's now probably minimum $2.5 million. If someone buys that, again, because we're not forcing anybody, but someone buys that because we've upzoned and turns it into 6 still individual single family homes, but you split the lot, those homes would still, because the way the math works, and we have all the evidence, I'm not making this up. We have the evidence from here, like in Silver Lake and Echo Park, where we have small lot subdivisions. If you tear down a $1 million home and build 6 $1 million or 6 homes, those homes are each $1 million. So if you build $2.5 million homes, that's like $30,000 a year in property tax times 6. That's $180,000 a year in property tax versus $5,000 for the same 10,000 square foot lot. When we start doing that, now we're talking improvements to infrastructure, green space. Again, money that goes back to those departments to make the city hum again. So to me, there really is, maybe people talked about it, the theory, the housing theory of everything. I do believe it. And I also, it's a yes and. Yes, build affordable housing. Yes, build private. So there's 2 types of affordable housing. There's affordable housing built with government dollars. There's also affordable housing built straight up with private funding. Build all of that and build market rate homes. Build all of it everywhere. And people want to look into things like land trusts, which are becoming really popular here. And they're like, the socialists really love land trusts. Now, the irony of the socialists loving land trust is it's a completely market-based system because you have put up the money and bought something and just put it in a trust forever. It's not socialism. It can be no more capital than anything. But things like that, I believe I'm a yes and person from my career in marketing and advertising and technology. Yes, and there's no everything is a good idea when it comes to housing.
Perfect. I appreciate that answer. Lots of great points just kind of added into it, which I mean it's wonderful. So thank you for that. What we're gonna do really quickly, while I believe Jasmine, did you have another question that you wanted to ask for the healthcare, or did you want to wait for that?
No, that's it.
Okay.
He kind of hit the points that where I was going to ask, so I
Hit the nail
appreciate
on
the
the
answer.
head. Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. And let's move on really quickly before we get to the fire rapid questions. We're going to jump into public education, especially with schools here in the state of California. Given your background in technology and communications, what federal approach would you champion to expand digital access and career technical pathways for students in our district's heavily working class communities?
So my daughter now goes to an LAUSD school in high school. I don't think LAUSD does a bad job with technology. I mean, really what's happening right now is this where there's 30% less students than we should have because we don't have enough housing. We also have, I think there's like a 10 to 15% drop this year because of ICE raids, of kids just not being able to attend school. I think as someone who's a little older, um, talking to my kids about AI, and understanding how it's being used in schools, especially in high school, um, I am kind of worried about how AI is being used. It's not so much access because everyone has a laptop. They all have access to a free chat GPT. I think the danger becomes, as someone who, my background is I'm an advertising copywriter. Um, and I worked my way through the ranks as a junior copywriter, senior copywriter, creative director, but learning from people, who knew more, who taught me along the way. When I use something like ChatGPT, I use it as a junior copywriter, and I know what to expect from a human junior copywriter and what I would put up with, and what I expect from the robot is no different. My fear is when I see kids using it today who ask it anything and everything and don't have any sense of strategy. I guess that's what the key word. I know the strategies that make asking a robot a question worthwhile. And once it starts getting into a space where those things aren't meeting my strategy anymore, I can say, okay, thanks, I'll take it from here. My fear is that with the access to technology and with a teacher core that doesn't understand, because again, why would they? Like, you spent your years learning how to teach math, you spent your years learning how to teach history. Why would you have to know how to use this robot in your class? I think where, to more specifically answer your question, I think where the federal government can come in is actually understanding and researching, and then providing guidance on how do teachers need to be retrained to make sure that their class is effectively using these tools. And that's all they are. AI is a tool. I know there's lots of promises. We're probably in a giant bubble. I'm not excited to see how this ends. I pray that it's not, but let's be honest, the math, I guess as the people say these days, the math isn't mathing when it comes to how AI is happening. Bust or not, AI is going to be here forever. So I think it's a matter of retraining teachers to actually understand how to use it, and then making that. I think what's going to separate people in the future is we've had this thing called the information economy, right? Or information workers, knowledge workers for since the internet, since like 1998. But that included, the teller at the bank. They were a knowledge worker because they were at the computer. I think what's going to start separating people is people who can do strategies and people who can't. And I think a lot of school tracks, unless you're in an honors or an AP track, they're trying to teach you strategy. And for everybody else, they're trying to teach you basics. And I think we have to fundamentally reassess, again, like I said earlier, when it comes to education, it needs to be a lifelong thing. Not everybody can do strategy at 14. Not everybody wants to do strategy at 14, right? So if we rethink what it means to have the ability to get education throughout your life, then we can start to say there's a little less pressure, but we can also be more clear that what we need is thinkers. And also, I think the reason that education suffers the way it does is, as we see under Project 2025 and the dismantling of the Department of Education, is if you are on the right and if you want a compliant citizenship, you dumb down education. You make people not thinkers. And actually, I heard that I just went to Mississippi this weekend to have a purple party. Could talk about that later. But I was kind of surprised that the people in Mississippi that I talked to, like the number one issue, or how do we fix this? Education, education, education. But again, it can't be the same education that I got. That was a 1950s education that I got in the 80s. That my kids are getting in 2025. That's the same education that kids got in the 50s. So we have to fundamentally rethink what it means to be a thinker and educated. And I'll just throw in a side note. I think that we should actually bring back philosophy, which we kicked out philosophy in our core education in the 1880s or 1890s. And I think bringing back world philosophy from Asia, from Greece, from I always think about the word ancient because like 2,500 years ago, isn't that ancient? But also, again, from Africa, from the Americas, there's lots of knowledge and approaches to life that that's thinking. Philosophy is the love of wisdom, the love of thinking. And I think it's actually something that's fundamentally missing from education. And I would absolutely push along with the three R's, the big P, philosophy.
I love that. I love that. And it's great that you mentioned, worldwide education, especially worldwide philosophy, because we have so many immigrant families, especially in the state of California. Um, with that being said, how would universal education, as an example, reform strengthening of the bilingual learning, or even early childhood education? How do you think that universal education would help those kind of things?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have two academic regrets in my life. One is I didn't take the AP chemistry test, and the other is I never finished learning Spanish. Um, and, again, it's one of those sort of jokes, right? Like, oh, I'm an educated American, I barely speak English, whereas our immigrants speak at least two languages, if not more, right? To me, an educated person is someone who speaks multiple languages. And there's actually a lot of, within LAUSD and some of the surrounding school districts, there are a lot of dual immersion programs. I think those dual immersion programs should actually be more of the standard than the outside, right? Like we should expect children to be learning here in California Spanish and English, or English and Chinese, but it should be English and something, and it should be from day one. I absolutely think that a universal education should cover that. And I think just to be clear, because we've mentioned universal education a couple of times, and I'll be totally clear about like my background with my children, how they were raised. They started at a co-op for preschool, and then they went to a charter school. So I did a few years of an LAUSD charter. Then they went to private school, and my son finished at a private school. And my daughter's now at LAUSD in high school. Um, I think again, if you want a private education for your children and you can afford it, that's great. When it comes to charter schools, I think they were a great experiment. And I think that experiment that we now have the data, and that data shows that charter schools do not perform better than non-charter schools. That experiment needs to end. And all that money that's going to charter schools needs to go where it not always should have gone. Again, I'm not sad about the experiment, but now that the experiment has proven with data that charter schools do not do better. Now they could do better by a zip code, but schools always did better by zip codes, right? So two private schools in a charter school and a public school in a wealthy zip code have the same outcome, and a charter school and a public school in a less well-off district, less resource area have the same outcomes. Meaning charter schools have shown that they're actually not a better way. And some people say the improvements to public schools were because they had that competition. Well, again, maybe they did, but they don't need that competition anymore. They need the resources. So we talk about universal education. I think it's time to get rid of charter schools.
That's great. And then just one final thing for me. This is going to be just something that kind of encompasses everything because you do advocate for not only universal but also free education when it comes to pre-K through college. And a recent study has shown from what looks to be the Wallet Hub website that California currently is the 30th when it comes to education throughout all of the United States. So with these two things in mind, how would the vision of free education address the overcrowded classrooms and the resource gaps that many individuals from California 34 schools face today? And how would you be able to kind of increase the ranking of the education?
Yeah, I think part of it is we are not. So part of it is the demographic changes are happening so fast that we're actually getting back to the point where here in Los Angeles and LAUSD schools might be closing because there's not enough kids. There's actually even just a demographic cliff. My daughter, who's now 16, was born in 2009. Um, After the the 2008 mortgage crisis and recession, there was just a huge drop off in the number of children. So schools, primary schools, and then soon colleges here in the next couple of years are just going to see a demographic cliff. I think the broader issue is we are in an anti-intellectual time, And I think what's important is for people in leadership to get back and not explain, advocate loudly for how important education is. And not you don't have to be an intellectual. You don't have to be anything. I'm about you being whoever you want to be, but you cannot be or should not be anti-intellectual. You shouldn't shame someone for trying to understand things. And maybe it comes out of a place of, well, I can't understand it, so I want to make fun and not be part of it. That anti-intellectualism is destroying not just the city, but this country. And also, famously, many immigrant communities prize education, whether or not those parents, they prize it for their. I think we get back to, there are enough families in Los Angeles on the border hungry where parents are working 2 or 3 jobs and aren't at home. That again is we have to look at everything. So when parents have a good job, a secure job, have a minimum livable wage, are able to feed, clothe, and house themselves and their families without government support, without having to work two shifts, and they're there for their families. I think those are the things that surround education, right? Because again, we know where education's successful by zip code. I can predict your SAT score by your zip code. Number one predictor. We have to stop pretending that it's anything but money. But again, it's better to blame someone else. It's better to blame the immigrant for their problem or the children of immigrants for their problem. If our whole society is set up to suck up the money that we make, the wealth that we make, I have it over here, the wealth of nations. It's not the wealth of the millionaires or the wealth of the propertied. It's the wealth of the nation. And we're currently in a situation that affects every aspect of our life, our politics, our government, our economy, our schools, because in the 1980s, we turned vice into virtue. And we went from greed is bad to greed is good. And Donald Trump is the end of that. I mean, literally, he was the embodiment of it. He still is. No, people, listen, greed is not good. Greed is bad. And so we need to bring back the virtues of uh, of wisdom and courage and make that the thing, not chasing wealth, but chasing, I think there's a chasing, working each day to achieve your own happiness. And when we get back to that and change our culture to change our politics, that's the sort of stuff that will actually get back to fixing our classrooms.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Loren. Jazz, if you would like to take on the rapid fire, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so Mr. Lauren, these set of rapid fire questions are pretty quick, so let's see if how quick you can think on your feet. So I'll run through these pretty quickly, so let's see how well you do, okay? All right, so the first question is living wage or universal income, basic income. Which would you push first in Congress if you were forced to choose?
Between UBI and the minimum livable
And
wage,
living wage.
minimum livable
Yes.
wage, no
Okay.
question. And it's
Okay.
probably nationally $25 an hour.
25. Okay, cool. Break up big tech or break up big pharma? Which is the more urgent thing
No,
you would choose?
that's not that is I'm going to say that's a trick question. Break them all up.
Okay.
There's no room for a monopoly. We need to have competitive markets everywhere. And if a market is not competitive, break them all up. And we know which markets are not competitive. Break them up.
Okay. And yes or no, is Los Angeles building enough housing?
No, we have something. We might be lucky to build 5,000 new units this year when we need 125,000 units. Not
Okay.
even close.
Would you or oppose ranked choice voting nationwide?
I am for ranked choice voting, but I think it's the minor comparison, or it's the minor fix to things like increasing the size of the House and to making voting affirmative, automatic, and easy. Because who cares if you have ranked choice voting if it's hard to vote? So first, it needs to be
Okay.
easy to vote.
Okay. Should every American get automatic voter registration?
Oh yeah. Not only should you get automatic voter registration, the second you're born, you should be issued your voter ID. And the second you turn 18, it is turned on. And the second you become naturalized and 18, you get your ID, you get your national voter ID, and it's turned on. The other couple things that I would do, I know this is rapid fire, but the other couple things is we already have National Election Day, General Election Day. All primaries in all the states should be the same day. There should be a voting month. And when you have a voting month, once you establish residency and you have your voter ID, you can vote in one primary, and that's it. There'll be if your voter ID shows up in 2 elections, we know there's been fraud somewhere, right? So voter
Okay.
month, 100% voting by mail, and election weekend, no more Tuesday election day. Easy, easy, easy.
All right. And to end the filibuster, yes or no?
Oh my God, have you been following my? Were you following my TikToks during the
Yes,
government
I have.
shutdown? Yes, yes, and yes. It is the most undemocratic. It is the reason why we have fascism today, and it's designed that way. We started as an aristocracy of a few white landed men, and the filibuster is simply there to make sure that they are still in control. If we want to change this country, and again, it's not in the Constitution, the Senate created it themselves, end the filibuster today.
Okay. Should Congress ban members from trading stock? Yes or no?
Yes, I'm an easy vote on that.
All
I'll
right.
introduce
And
my own
cash bill?
legislation. I'll co-consult. And in cash bail, yes, we've already done that here in LA. And cash bail, absolutely.
Okay. Is LA homelessness crisis fixable primarily through cash assistance and mental health care?
If you mean cash assistance as direct cash payments,
Yeah,
yes,
like it's something like a cash injection type of
yes, yeah,
concept. Okay.
yes, oh yeah. And so basically, we talked UBI earlier as far as minimum livable wage. Yes, there should basically we're spending in Los
Mhm.
Angeles County between $35,000 and $45,000 per homeless person per year. If we just gave them that cash instead of giving it to the services, and say it solved half the problem, not all the
Okay.
problem, say it solved half the problem. We just solved half the problem for the same money we're spending today.
Sure. And lastly, should higher education be universally free?
Uh, in the public setting, yes. So if your state has a university, that state university should be free. But if you want to go to USC, and I don't know why anyone would, I would easy. Yeah, your Stanfords, your Harvards, your USC's, private schools are private schools. They can charge whatever they want. But if you have a state charter, if you're UCLA, if you're Cal State Los Angeles, if you're Santa Monica City College, it should absolutely be free.
Okay. And this
Or
is just a
free,
follow
free,
up. What
free at
about
point of purpose. I just want to be real quick. I don't ever like to say anything's free. It is tax funded. It is taxpayer funded. It might be free at the point of service, but you, as the taxpayer, paid for it, and it should be yours to use, and it should be the highest quality. You should
so
demand that.
essentially a public good? It's considered to be okay.
Absolutely.
So just a follow up. Would you also apply that to trade school? So for those who don't want to go to college and
Yeah.
they want a specific trade, would you apply that same
Yes. Yeah.
funding at the point of them going into trade school?
I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but I'm pretty sure Los Angeles Trade Check is part of the community colleges here in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So as far as I know, it's a public school.
Okay, sure. So those were the end of my political rapid fire. So we do have some fun ones towards the end, so be on the lookout for that. So
Okay.
I'll pass
Right.
it back to Matthew to talk about the next set of questions, which is public safety. Matthew?
Absolutely, especially with California being so huge. Public safety is definitely number one. So you support scaling unarmed model crisis response teams nationwide. How would this approach improve public safety, specifically in CA 34, where residents often call for mental health first responses rather than the armed police?
That's not totally true who they call for. If you go into
Mhm.
Boyle Heights and parts of East Los Angeles, so Boyle Heights is the city of LA, and LAPD covers them. East Los Angeles is unincorporated in the county. The sheriff covers them. Um, a lot of the people in those neighborhoods want to actually self police. They know that the police or the sheriff is bad for them in the sense that if someone breaks the law, has some sort of infraction, there's no giving of doubt. There's no, hey, you made a mistake. Let's work to fix that mistake. So they talk a lot more about self policing than even like mental health or policing at all, right? I think, and what we have now expanding through Los Angeles is that unarmed model of crisis response, UMCR. Basically, and this is one of the things I'm super disappointed in Mayor Bassin, because when she actually ran, she ran on this idea that we asked the police to do too much. So I'm not an ACAB, I'm not a defund the police, but we do not need to grow the police department of the city of Los Angeles. How do I know that? Because here's a scary fact. In 2025, we're going to have more deaths by car in the city of LA than murders. When it comes to high crime, Los Angeles is one of the safest places in the nation. Only New York City is safer when it comes to large metros. Um, so we ask the police to police things that they shouldn't be policing. And you cited Matthew. It's a lot of like people who are having mental health care issues. The clearance rate of crime in Los Angeles is way under 10%. I don't think we need to grow the beat patrol of the city of LA. Oh, and how do I know? So in 1991, when Los Angeles had over 1,000 murders, we had nearly 10,000 cops. In 2025, we have, I don't even think 9,300 LAPD officers, and we're not going to have 300 murders this year. Like, so there's at a certain point, the correlation to cops to safety breaks down. But what we do know, and I'm glad you used the word public safety and not crime, and a lot of people, when they talk crime, what they are really saying is, I see homeless people on the streets, and they take that as crime. And I'm not saying that people on the streets are criminals, but in their mind, it's crime. Really, to your point, it is about public safety. So we don't have to grow LAPD. We don't have to shrink LAPD. But if we start growing this UCMR division, where that it responds to the fully 60 to 65% of calls that are around mental health that LAPD shouldn't, then LAPD can do what it's good at, which is, I want to say, prevent crime. It can attack the issues of crime and try to solve crime. Because again, no one's stopping crime. Like the myth of a cop showing up at a robbery and stopping it, like that doesn't happen. Cops don't stop crime. They come after the fact and hopefully maybe investigate it and you find people, right? Um, so when it comes to public safety, yes, the federal government should absolutely be spending a lot of money and giving it to the states and the cities to update and create UCMR everywhere. And it works. Everywhere it's done, it works. And it works here in the pilot programs in the city of LA. And even as our budget was falling, we just expanded it to a third of the city. I'm running for California 34 to make sure that the state and the city get enough money to expand it everywhere.
I love that. And it's great because your emphasis on solving crimes is it's really it's wonderful to hear it because giving that emphasis though on the solving crimes over the low level enforcement, what federal role should exist in supporting LA's efforts to improve clearance rates and even reduce repeat offenses?
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 9 weeks to become a beat cop, and to become a investigator actually requires a BA. So again, programs that back to education, programs that say, hey, you're the beat cop, let's actually get and you want to stay a police officer, you want to stay in law enforcement, let's get you the education that you need to become an investigator and a detective. And I could see a police force that has, instead of a few hundred detectives and thousands of beat cops, of a lot more investigators and a lot fewer beat cops and a lot more UMCR. And that's how we address public safety and crime in totality. And this is still a separate discussion from already the people. Well, again, what should be a crime, right? There should be no vice laws. Like I'm a liberal. Somewhere up there is on liberty. I am a true believer in liberty, that nobody has the right to tell you how to live your life and what you do. And there should be zero vice laws. It should be legal to gamble. It should be legal if you want to take drugs. This includes even prostitution, loitering. Now, do you want prostitution on your streets? No. But if it's legal and regulated, do you want people doing drugs on your streets? No. But if it's legal and regulated, right, then we can make our streets safe. If you commit a crime against life, liberty, or property, if you take someone's life, a crime of liberty is actually, an assault or an SA, right? Those are crimes against liberty. You've taken something from somebody that they cannot simply replace. And if you've taken property after a certain amount, you absolutely should face. I don't think the criminal justice system does bad in those instances, but where it does bad is where it makes up laws around vice that just they're not, people living their lives should not be illegal. So again, it's this holistic approach. And there's still the whole another part we can get into if you want, which is how do we take in the people who have been put in prison for years? California shut down 4 prisons in the last 8 years, and we're about to shut down a fifth. But it's still not easy for formerly incarcerated to get back into society. How do we make it easy for them to get back into society? And again, that's how we address public safety and opportunity and make sure everyone can succeed.
Love that. I appreciate that. We might be going into it a little bit later on in the evening or in the afternoon. But I'd love for Jazz, if it's okay, we to head right into the environment and infrastructure portions of the conversation.
Yes. But really quickly, there was a question in the chat from Yoli. She asked about what was your stance on mitigating school pupillings. And I'm just saying the term pupilling just for TikTok friendly language, so you can kind of get the clue of what I'm referencing. But do you have any thoughts on that, or any policy prescriptions to help mitigate or any type of prevention towards that regarding school pupillings?
Yes. So Second Amendment is sort of the Second Amendment. Um, I think it is misinterpreted. I think when it says well-regulated militia, it means a well-regulated militia. We could look, as with many things, we could look to the Nordic countries. Anyone in Finland. In fact, in Finland, if you are, I think it's only the men, but basically, if you served in the military, you are required to have a gun. That rifle, though, is stored by the state in the state locker that you have to check out. So I think I think the crisis of school shootings is really, again, a mental health care crisis. It's people feeling that they don't belong. It is a culture that says your problems are someone else's responsibility. And that starts, again, with our current president. It starts with the people at the Heritage Foundation. It starts with Stephen Miller. It starts with, well, it was Charlie Kirk, but he can't do that anymore. It is the Joe Rogans of this world. It is who's the new pest, Fuentes, right? And my son, I personally had to go with my son who started going down the Andrew Tate rabbit hole when he was 14 and 15 and had to, I don't say pull him out, but again, guide him, right? This is what I'm talking about, like cultural leadership. The right leads culturally. Now, where they're leading us is into these horrible, vile places. But on the left, we have completely surrendered any type of moral leadership. And again, this is before my time, but it seems to have ended with Martin Luther King's life, right? Like the left had this promise and this hope, and this great man is taken down, and maybe also a little to do with, obviously JFK was also assassinated. Here, RFK actually was shot in this district, and the hospital where he ultimately died in was in this district. I think that trauma on the left, and again, this pursuit of power from the third way and Bill Clinton, made us drop our cultural leadership. And I'm not afraid to take that on, as I think is becoming obvious in this discussion. So I think we have to actually say what virtue is, what is right, that the only person responsible for you is you, and you cannot blame someone else. And should there be gun regulation? Absolutely. Were people less safe when we had the assault rifle ban? No, they were more safe. We know this. Am I in favor of another assault rifle ban? I could support it, but I still think it's fixing the things on that's the edge fix. The real fix is the mental health fix and fixing our culture so that people don't blame someone else and that they also seek help and know that that help is there.
All right. Thank you for that answer. And just to give you some context of what's going on in the chat, if you see fruit, that is just to help redirect the algorithm because certain words do trigger this app. So
Okay.
just kind of be mindful of certain words for us, please, if you don't mind. But I
Gotcha.
understand. I know it's kind of tough if you're not used to it. But yes, if you see that, that's what they're doing just to kind of help
Okay.
redirect the algorithm away from what we're talking about. But I'm just going to go ahead and roll into the topic about environment and infrastructure. So we understand that the district is heavily impacted by freeway and pollution and extreme heat. Could you tell me what will be your approach to end fossil fuel subsidies and enforce emission standards that can translate to cleaner air for your community?
Yes. And it goes back to the very beginning when we were talking about the tax code. When I said remove all tax expenditures, every subsidy, every deduction for fossil fuels, every tax exemption for fossil fuels is a tax expenditure. Just get rid of them. And the crazy thing is, when you get rid of those tax expenditures, the real price of oil starts to show up. And the real price of oil is very expensive. We're not going to make an oilless economy. Oil lubricates the world, but it doesn't need to power the world. It doesn't need to power all of the world. So the second you strip out the tax expenditures, which is literally what I'm running on, we start to clean up. It is the most pro-environmental stance you can have. So, like, do you need, like, the idea of, one of the questions I received earlier from a group was like, are you pro fracking or against fracking? I'm not against fracking because there is fracking is no more dangerous than regular oil extraction. There's zero evidence that if you pump oil versus from a traditional way versus frack oil or gas from the fracking way, it is no more dangerous to the environment. But JazB, to your point, what is dangerous to the environment is to subsidize the pumping of oil, is to subsidize getting gas out of the ground. It just doesn't deserve it. So when you get rid of all those tax expenditures, all of a sudden, wind, solar, and other renewable energy become not just cost competitive, they become the answer to our problems, right? And like in Los Angeles, we just had our very last jewel of coal-fired energy enter the city last week or 2 weeks ago. So the city of Los Angeles gets all of our energy from renewable sources. And the other part, real quick, is if you are polluting, when you pollute, so say you are getting you're processing oil, whatever, into gasoline, and you're polluting, you have to make sure that whatever the standard that we set, I think the federal government needs to set the standards of the pollution level. If you and then the companies in a free market should be able to find their own solutions to achieve that. If they violate the standard, then they can fix it on their own. And when they don't fix it on their own, then they get taxed and the government will hire a third party to fix it for them.
Thank you for that. And also, I read that just with the state of California in general regarding data centers, we learned that they are also on the rise, not only just in California, but places in the South. They're in pretty much on the West Coast as well. I'm not sure if you've actually been
Yep.
keeping up with just the booming of data centers popping everywhere. Could you tell me what are your thoughts about that regarding the environmental impact of what those data centers will be due to the rise of the demand for AI and other technologies to store data?
Yeah.
Could you tell me more about that? Because I have a tech background, so I know you can kind of expound
Oh,
upon that
cool.
as well with your background.
So when I was just when I went to Mississippi to Oxford, I actually flew through Memphis, where Elon Musk is building his giant supercomputer. And they're building a giant, or Grok, whatever, X Grok is building their giant supercomputer there. And there's been a lot of pushback, but Tennessee just bends the knee to the wealthy. And even though the people don't want it there, it's being built. Another quick side note is one of the projects I did a long time ago was a 3D VR experience to explain what a data center is. So if anybody wants to know, we can have a fun discussion about what is a data center. But as far as to your actual question, I think we should not be afraid of the future, right? Again, I'm a yes and person. I think we're getting to the point where there's probably a ridiculous overinvestment in these data centers. And I think that's going to lead to its own problem. I think we need to look at all sorts of energy generation. I actually am pro-nuclear. I think nuclear can be safe and is the least pollutive way of generating. But we definitely need more wind and we need more solar, and we need to update our grid, right? So when we talk infrastructure, just updating the national grid, which Texas removed itself from. So all of the country, all 47 contiguous states are tied to the same grid, except for Texas. And we lose something like 30 to 35% of our power generation, right? If we just fixed that grid and made it more efficient, and the other cool technology that we have that we haven't had in the past is batteries. So the way California is actually succeeding, so even though California leads the country in the number of data centers and we're building them faster, But here's the crazy statistic, and Governor Newsom just said this last week. I'm not a huge Newsom fan, but I'm a fan of the statistic, which is even despite all of that and our population growth, that per capita, California is using the least amount of energy it's ever used per person because of things like battery technology. So when we're generating power all throughout the day from solar, off that we're generating too much power from solar. But again, power has to be consumed as soon as it's created, unless you store it. So I'm a big believer, and again, where can the federal government step in? The federal government can absolutely step in with the infrastructure to upgrade the national grid and to really include in that grid infrastructure batteries. The pollution component of should you be generating the electricity for your data center from coal or natural gas? No, you shouldn't. As far as the water that goes through it, that's probably the most concerning part. But there's not too much evidence that the water that's being, once the water, I imagine there's a technological solution to recirculating the water, much like a nuclear power plants, right? The water is used to cool because the biggest the worst thing for a computer or CPU or GPU is heat. So all of that water that's gushing, and it literally is gushing through these data centers, is to cool the data centers. So if we can find ways to make sure that that water is being recirculated within the data center infrastructure itself, I can see that there are much more environmentally friendly ways to power the future. And we have to have a positive vision of the future. That's the America I grew up in. There were positive visions of our future. I think that's been robbed from us since the 80s, since the greed is good, since venture capital, since creating a system that allows our wealth to be stolen. We enabled it. We have to get back to saying, you're not going to steal our wealth anymore. And we collectively, there's 336 million of us. There's only 150,000 ultra wealthy or high wealth individuals. When we see a positive vision for ourselves, for our futures, then we can solve these problems. We shouldn't be afraid of the future. I'm certainly not.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm gonna open it up for anyone who would like to come up and ask Mr. Loren a question. It looks like I don't see any questions in the chat, so if not, if there's no one in the queue, we'll go ahead and move forward to talking about bipartisanship. So I'll take it over to hand it to Matthew.
Absolutely, because one of the biggest issues right now that we have in, the United States government is specifically partisanship and even bipartisanship. So with California 34 being, it has one of the highest percentages of a no party preference and low propensity voters. So how does being an independent help you engage voters who feel ignored by both the Democrats and the Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, this is the genesis of my run. And I'm excited that you've all done your research into our voter list. Yes, one out of every three voters in California 34 is a nonpartisan voter. And the assumption is that they're not like some secret, right-wing conservative Republican, that they are, in fact, progressive, but like me, a progressive that just doesn't see a future or even today with the Democratic Party. um, I am running to be that option for the first time for them. And I'm running for all the disaffected Democrats. Um, the theory to power of me as an independent is not just me running as the sole nonpartisan person in the country. There are many throughout the country. And it doesn't, and most of them, you won't find them in a purple district. And if I lived in a purple district, I wouldn't be doing this run because it wouldn't make sense. Because why would I want to potentially give this seat over to a budding fascist, right? Um, but it makes sense in the super red and the super blue districts, of which this is a super progressive district. Um, the theory to power of independence is in the House, especially, and really any legislative body, anything but the presidency. If we elect enough unaffiliated and nonpartisans to stop both parties from a majority. So imagine waking up on November 4th, 2026, to find out the House of Representatives is going to be something like 215 Democrats and 215 Republicans and 5 true independents. We get our House of Representatives back. One of two things is going to happen. Either both parties prove immediately that they're a uniparty And on June 3rd, they come together to elect one of their own that they all agree to be speaker. That's the first thing that has to happen to open the House is election of the speaker. So either way, we win the battle because the hyper partisanship ends, but then we know, oh, you guys were always this uniparty. Or the other outcome that I truly actually think the hyper partisanship is real is that they can't agree on a speaker, and we have instead of the majoritarian version of the House, we have a power sharing House, which we've kind of seen versions of this in the Senate when it was tied. But in the House, if we actually had enough to stop both parties from a majority, one of those 5 independents, it could be 10 independents, it could be 15, one of them would be elected speaker. Every single committee and subcommittee in the House would be divided equally between the Republicans and the Democrats, and a number of independents would be the tiebreaker. One of the myths, and I talk a lot about myths of this country, is that you need a majority to govern. No, you don't need a majority to govern. It's BS. Now, do our single district seats make it easier to have 2 parties run? Yes. Does the electoral college for the presidency make it nearly impossible to have more than 2 parties? Yes. Does the fact that we only have 435 House seats when we should have between 580 and 1,300 make it harder? Yes. Does it make it impossible? No. And what I am running to do, and what all the other unaffiliated and nonpartisans are running in 2026 to do, is to prove that it's not only not impossible, that it's very possible. And that if the American people have the courage to do what they want, what they say they want, they say they want to end the hyperpartisanship. They say they want a government that works for them. You have to stop the insanity of doing the same thing over and over again. So what I am and what all of the other nonpartisan and independents are who are running, we are the option. So if the American people have the courage of their convictions, they now have the option to vote for someone to show it. And that is how, again, I don't think if we keep doing what we're doing, we're not going to get a different result. It's clear as day.
Absolutely. And one of those things too that really does help with getting those results is things like negotiating and even compromising. So what is your take on compromise and negotiating?
It's what you will compromise and what you won't compromise. And what I will never compromise is the dignity of any resident of this country, citizen, um, naturalized citizen, um, legal resident, undocumented. Every resident of this country by the 14th Amendment, even if the 6 Supreme Court justices can't read the document, I have reading comprehension and I'm not a lawyer. Every resident has an equality under the law, and that equality starts with recognizing dignity. I will not compromise with anybody who says Black people deserve less, or trans and LGBTQ people deserve less, or an immigrant deserves less. There's no compromise there, right? But if we want to talk about what is the actual best tax rate, oh, there's plenty of compromise. If we want to talk about what our spending priorities should be, there's plenty of compromise, right? That's open to discussion. But I think, and this is why people, to me, again, why I'm not a Democrat, one of the many myriad reasons I think why people are fleeing that party is because they got accused of all of this identity politics. JazB, Matthew, the truth is all politics is identity politics. It is truly an individual thing. All politics is identity politics. But when you start saying that identity is the only thing that matters, or that's the only lens we're going to look through things, then you start to lose touch with the reality of the situation. That's why my campaign is a campaign of dignity for all. And that is something that we will never compromise, and that I will never compromise. Once we can achieve that, and once I have someone I can work with in good faith, right? You can't, everything that's broken right now, and again, they just passed the NDAA, $900 billion for defense. Was that compromise? Certainly isn't to the benefit of the people of the United States. It benefits our empire. It benefits Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. It doesn't benefit anyone who's listening here right now. unless you're the CEO of Lockheed. I, um, right? So, like, what that wasn't compromise that just passed, even though it was a bipartisan bill, but bipartisan. Something like 135 Democrats voted for it, including Jimmy Gomez from this district. That's not bipartisanship. That is kneeling to empire, right? So, again, what are we talking about? Like, what are our core values? What are the things here? I think is where I come from, a business background. And again, I don't believe like the idea that we should make government business. No, dumb, ridiculous, a completely stupid idea. But what we can do is where business succeeds is if you say, these are my objectives and goals. These are the strategies I'm using to get there. And then these are the tactics, in essence, the laws that we're passing to see if we can achieve our goals. If we've achieved our goals with these laws, great. If not, let's change the laws to get to our goals. Let's start agreeing on the goals for the American people. My goal, which I know the people of California 34 want because I hear it from them, my goals are that the people here and throughout this country can be healthier, wealthier, more secure, and happier. When we start with those as our goals, we start to rethink, what is government? Why does government even exist at all? I think we have to start asking the right questions to get to the right strategies, to get to the right tactics. And from there, yeah, we're not going to compromise our values. Every human being has dignity and cannot be compromised. And if you start giving me bad faith arguments, well, they're this, the Somalis are this, the Venezuelans are that, black people are this. No, we're not just, there's nothing to discuss. Thank you. Have a good day. When you're ready to talk policy that affects every single American equally, I'm here for that conversation every day, every second. It's the thing that gets me the most excited.
Thank you so much. And honestly, that was actually just a question from the audience because that question in and of itself, Jazz, I think you'd agree with me on this. It works for all three of the other questions that were just kind of here it separately. Because the thing is that yes, we want bipartisanship. We want to see different plans and policies that we can do to create that bipartisanship. So I think just to kind of put this in a bow for bipartisanship specifically, what policy do you think would be able to unite the Democrats and the Republicans at this very moment
I'm going to
that you can
just
make?
change your question slightly to what policies will unite the majority of Americans, regardless of party or partisanship,
Mhm.
taxing the wealthy and tax funded public health care. They both have majorities of, again, if you do break it down by party, a majority of Republicans support taxing the wealthy. A majority of Republicans support some form of tax funded public health care. A majority of independents and a majority of Democrats do also. Let's strip the let's not even ask the bipartisan question. What are the policies that will unite the people that they're already united behind? The question is, how come if 65% of the people are united behind those two policies, that 100% of Congress cannot deliver it? That's the system. The system works exactly as it's designed. It works the way it was designed in 1787. And it doesn't work for you, and it doesn't work for me. It works for a wealthy aristocracy. And this country was on its best behavior after World War II. Our history, we were so close to be getting back to the fascist country that we were before the Civil War, leading up to World War II. Charles Lindbergh was the most famous American. He was the pro-fascist, America first. That was our future. And then the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And then we became anti-communist, and we were on our best behavior until 1991 when communism fell. We've reverted to the mean. This is who we are. This is who we've always been. But we also know that outside of government, outside of politics, there are things that bring the American people together. Let's ask those questions. Let's not ask the question, what will bring Democrats or Republicans together? Let's ask, how do we get to the things that a majority of Americans, regardless of partisanship or party, already want? Let's get that done. And that's why I'm running.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jazz. Go for the rapid fires. You know the fun ones.
Oh, absolutely. So yes, as I said earlier in the town hall, Mr. Loren, that we're gonna tackle the rapid fire, but these are more fun
Let's do
in
it.
nature. So, all right. So tell me, are you more of a morning coffee person or a late night taco person?
Today I'm going to be both.
Okay.
My carnitas after this. No, but by and large, I'm a morning coffee person. In fact, I wake up at 6 o'clock, head downstairs, and get that carafe going.
All right. And regarding the Silver Lake City Council, can you tell me what was your base neighborhood council debate moment? Was it spicy or more wholesome?
Oh no, that was spicy over what used to be. Oh gosh, there was a street festival in Silver Lake, and they were abusing the city's system for permitting, and there were a lot of heated moments. It got quite spicy.
Okay. If your campaign had a theme song, what would it be?
I won't back down by Tom Petty.
Okay. Um, with your marketing, so if you were to choose between your marketing brain or your tech startup brain, which one kicks in more during the campaign?
Um, they're kind of the same brain, which I think you
Tend to
kind of
use
heard
the left
earlier.
side of our brains. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more of I'm a problem solver. Like that's been my job
Hmm.
my whole life. And again, to me, to solve a problem, there's actually uh, a rubric to go through, and my brain just sort of is in autopilot most of the time in that rubric of what are our objectives? What are we trying to solve? What is the question even? What is the question? Okay, what are we trying to solve? How do we get there? And that's sort of my constant thrust. And that was my thrust. That was what made me successful in marketing. And that was what also made me successful in technology. And that is what will make me successful here in politics and government.
Okay. Someone just asked in the chat, what are you a fan of, the
Lakers.
Lakers or the
Oh,
Clippers?
Lakers.
Okay.
Lakers. Oh,
Okay.
I grew up in the '80s. Magic Johnson, the goatest of the goats.
The
No,
classic.
Lakers,
Yeah.
Lakers, Lakers. Yeah.
Mhm. All right. And what's your go-to LA comfort food after a long day?
Um, Chinese fast food barbecue pork and some fried
Okay.
rice.
And your
Shout
dog or your
I
cat, who's the true boss at your home?
um the cat rules the roost because the dog can't get into the rooms where the cat is because the dog will lose badly. So
Okay. If you could instantly fix one daily LA annoyance, what would it be?
what would the daily annoyance be? Um Trash. We just have
Okay.
it's we have trash everywhere and we shouldn't. We have a beautiful, beautiful city. Um and there should be no trash anywhere in any neighborhood anywhere. So I'd get us to pick up the trash.
And regarding NFL, who would your fans? I mean, are you a fan of the Chargers, Rams, or the 49ers?
Well, a perfect season would be the Niners, the Raiders, and the Cowboys going 0 and 17.
Okay.
But when it comes to the Rams and the Chargers, I grew up a Rams fan. My dad actually had season tickets when they were in the Coliseum and then at Anaheim. When they moved to St. Louis, I got really upset at the NFL and the Rams. I'm a homer by nature, so the Chargers were the closest team. So I had many years of Philip Rivers. But ultimately, when the Rams moved back, I'm a Rams fan. But when it comes to football, because of that heartbreak, what happened to me as a fan in 94, 95, I just like good football games.
All right. And if you were a hiker, what would be your favorite hiking place? Ellison Park, Griffith, or can you tell me another hidden gem that people don't know about to hike?
Well, Elysian is in the district, so Elysian's important. Debs Park is also in the district near Highland Park and Montecito Heights. And it's a hidden gem. But I think my kids played soccer at Griffith for years and years, and the amount of hikes I did through Griffith is just it's hard to beat the 360-degree views when you get to the top of Griffith and you can see to the ocean. You see this San Fernando Valley. You see the San Gabriel Valley. It's pretty hard to beat.
Okay. And if your kids were to describe your political style in one word, what would it be?
Uh, what would my kids describe my politics? I think they would describe it as honest.
Okay. All right. So those were the that just pretty much wraps up my rapid fire fun. You did pretty well. It helped us learn a little bit more about you on the fun side,
Thank you.
so I do appreciate that. So, all right, I'm going to pass it over to Matthew to open it up for Q&A.
Yeah, if there's anybody that is in the audience right now that would like to come up and ask a question, or if you would like to stay in the comments, it's perfectly okay as well. If you got any questions at the moment, we'd love to relay them over to Mr. Loren. Otherwise, if not, then we'll go into closing with him. But if anyone has any questions right now, please feel free to ask away. I feel like all my questions, personally, Jazz, have been fully answered. I don't know if people have been seeing it, but I've just been excited from top to bottom about all of the answers he's given. So we'll give it just a couple of minutes just to check. And I think you're muted right now. Oh,
Oh,
actually, how do you feel about Prop 50?
it was an easy yes. Um, an easy yes, but again, with the idea that we should have no gerrymandering. So earlier when we talked about all the voting reforms, there should be a national ban on gerrymandering. And I absolutely
Mm-hmm.
think, again, we need to not just triple the size of the House, or at least make it so that the House has, Wyoming has like 550,000 people. Then we need to re-proportion so that the number of representatives is 550,000 divided by 336 million of us, which would make it something like 580. So almost 150 more representatives just by doing that. Um, Along with doing that is a national ban on gerrymandering. And I literally would just make small boxes starting in the northeast corner of every state. And you draw the closest thing to a rectangle that you can that gets, again, if we went to my magic number of 1,305 representatives, the 250,000 people you need. Or in the
So it'll
city of
be
Absolutely.
more
Los
congruent
Angeles,
shapes. Mm-hmm.
yes. Yeah. And yeah, it's a joke that that the elected officials pick their voters and that the voters aren't picking their elected officials. So in the short term, Prop 50 was necessary to disarm how California put it, or untie how California tied their arms behind their back in this fight. But it shouldn't have been a fight. But the absolute true answer is national ban on gerrymandering.
Absolutely. And then we actually do have a guest here with us, Miss Ayana. Ayana, I hope you're having a great day today.
Hi,
I
Anna.
am. Hi, Finny. Hi, Jazz. How are you? And hello, Lauren.
Hello.
Hello. Well,
You really caught my attention with that thing about the national gerrymander ban because every state is in charge of its elections. So how would you get that passed? How are you going to
Um,
tell the states, hey, we're the federal government. We get to tell you that you can't draw your maps the way you want. We want you to do them like this, and you can't favor any political party. That's crazy.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, we did have a Voting Rights Act up to a point that is being torn down. So we do know that there's a history where we can say to a certain point that the federal government can tell states certain minimum requirements of voting. Honestly, if we had a national movement of state by state of changing all state laws to what I said earlier, of getting all states to at least agree to in their own constitutions and their own ways they run elections, is to the minimum of everybody have the same primary day because we already have the same election day.
Yeah.
Everybody agreeing to 30 days before generals and primaries, either ranked choice voting, which I was asked earlier about, but I actually think you get rid of primaries altogether if you've heard of star voting. And you just have one election and you rank everybody in that election. The other things is just, in California, when we went to nonpartisan elections in 2011, the first election was 2012, we stripped the parties out of being part of the mechanism of of how elections are run.
Yeah.
And that's true in like 24 or 25 states. The other half of the states, like in Louisiana, um, there's only two official parties, or basically, and they're part of they're intertwined into how the state runs its elections. So I do think there's things that the federal government can do and pass a law. And I would, when we increase the size of the Supreme Court to 13 to match how many judicial districts we have, I actually think we can get a Supreme Court to say that this is still constitutional and that there is, under the 14th Amendment, it's still part of the Constitution, under the 14th Amendment, that this is a basic requirement of how states have to ensure equality under the law for every citizen.
Okay, I'm gonna come live with you when the Civil War starts, because that's.
Come on over. Where do you live now, if I may ask?
I'm in Ohio.
Okay. Make the trek. The thing about California, everyone's always welcome. Everyone and anyone, we love it. So if you ever feel the need to leave, come on over.
I appreciate that. All right, thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Ayana.
Thank you, Ayana.
Okay, Jazz, if you would like to go to closing, I think this is a good way to kind of end the evening.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Loren, thank you for joining us tonight. But before you go, we want to know, what is your final message to voters before the primaries and election day?
Yeah, specifically here in California 34, who are my voters, we don't have to convince each other how to be progressive or to be progressive at all. The question before you, the voters of California 34, is what kind of progressive leadership do you want? We all agree when I talk to you and I ask you, does the two-party system work for you? Other than a few tried and true, very blue, everyone says, no, it does not. And I'm excited to be running to give you the opportunity and the option to vote for someone who shares your values, but also shares your ultimate goal of systemic change. And we can be the example, as we have led the United States for decades in our ingenuity, in our imagination, in showing that diversity is our ultimate strength. We can also lead the way in showing that systemic change is how we can create an America that works for all of us. We can lead the way in showing that dignity for all is how we change our culture to change our politics. And I am excited not to lead California 34, but to be the voice of the very bright, the very courageous, the visionaries that make up the 740,000 residents of this district.
Thank you for that. So, as we mentioned before, Matthew and I, we thoroughly appreciated the conversation that we just had from you. But before you go, we want to send you another invite to join us on our next town hall. We have one coming up with a candidate named William Marks. William is running for Texas 25th Congressional District, and that will be held tomorrow, which is December 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you have any free time tomorrow, be sure to stop by and listen to our conversation with William. And lastly, we want to also invite you to our roundtable discussion. This roundtable discussion we have here on OVC, where we go live and invite candidates like you and other candidates as well to talk about the current events and also anything that you would like to share with OVC or just the audience. So be on the lookout for that invite. We will send that via email. So we would love to have you to for our roundtable discussion. That roundtable discussion will be held next Sunday, which is December 21st at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully you'll join us, because it will be a panel full of candidates just like you, having just wholesome talks. So we would love for you to join us.
I appreciate it. I look forward to hearing William Marks tomorrow, and hope he enjoys his time here as much as I did. And I look forward to joining your roundtable in two Sundays from now. And thank you for all this. Your platform was amazing. Your questions are great. The audience was awesome. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it.
And thank you again for joining us. And also, we want to thank OVC for hosting this town hall. I want to also give a special thanks to Matthew for being here with me to help moderate. I couldn't do it without him, and it's been a pleasure with me moderating with him as well. And also, I want to thank the participants of the live. Just with your questions, definitely helps the live keep going and to keep the conversation flowing. And a special thanks to our OVC team. We do a lot of laboring work in the back end, so it does not go unnoticed, and we really appreciate our team because they are awesome. So with that being said, just to fully close it out, for those who are not familiar with OVC, we are also known as Our Vote Counts. We are a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity, and ensure that every voice is heard. Through education, outreach, accountability, and action, we're building a stronger democracy. So with one informed vote at a time, please join us, because your vote is your power. So with that, have a good night and be safe. Bye.
Thank you.